Hi there, and welcome to a new episode of Impact Talks. Today we have the co-founder and managing director at Blinkist, Niklas Jansen, with us. Blinkist is pretty well known. A lot of my team uses it. But Niklas, I'd love to know from you what Blinkist is and how you started this journey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Simply put, Blinkist is a product that offers you the key insights from the world's best nonfiction books, and since yesterday also from podcasts. So for people that are busy, that don't have time to read a full book, we provide an easy access to the information, and then you can still decide as a user if you want to go deeper and read a full book, or if you want to stick with the key insights that we provided you.
How did it start? Because obviously this is an idea I can imagine that pops up a lot, but yet Blinkist is the one that survived and is thriving and obviously has the best way of delivering the whole product. Can you kind of shed a light of how it all started? Were you always an entrepreneur, or was it just like you hopped on the idea and it just worked?
Yeah, maybe let me start a little bit even earlier. So I studied business, and I always say the reason I studied business is because after school, I didn't really know what to do with my life. And I felt business is the subject where I have to make no commitment today what I want to do later, because it's a very broad field. So I thought, okay, just going to enroll to business school and started studying business. I met my later co-founder, Holger, at university, and I think the second or third year in university, we started our first company as students. And that was really when I got hooked on entrepreneurship. I always was a person that had many, many ideas, but this was the first time I actually really did something with these ideas. And we started a company. It was really exciting to just build something from scratch, to find people that joined your vision and then really start executing the vision, really doing a business. So I think from that moment on, I knew that I want to do something on the entrepreneurship side for the rest of my life. After university, we were pretty clear we want to start another company together, but we lacked this idea that we were fully passionate about. And for me, it's very, very important that I'm 100% passionate about what I do. So we said, okay, let's not jump on anything just for the sake of doing it. Let's wait until we find the right idea. So after university, I started working for one of the big four companies, and I worked in M&A corporate finance, so something very different from what I did before and what I'm doing now. But it was really this experience of, I was interested in M&A, like corporate finance in university, and the way my mind works is that I have to really get into something to explore it. So I jumped in, learned a lot, had a really intense 1.5 years. But really soon also realized that I don't want to be a consultant or a banker, but I want to be an entrepreneur. So I reconnected with Holger, another friend from university, and we started brainstorming ideas of businesses we could start. And so this is now then coming to your question, how did it all start, is really the observation that we made that we all shared one problem. And the problem we shared was not being able to read books anymore. During university, we all read a lot, we read a ton. But working full time, it was just very hard to still find time and motivation to read a book. And young and naive as we were back then, we thought, okay, if we have that problem, then anyone else must have the problem too. So we got really, really excited about that because it felt like a problem that we were passionate to solve, and at the same time a great business opportunity. So we really got started thinking more about it, how it could look like. We did a lot of research, started to also observing that in 2011, 2012, there was a big change happening, and the change that was happening was that people started reading on their mobile phones. And probably we all read more than ever, it's just we read differently. So we saw this problem, we saw this change in behaviors, and we just brought these two things together, and this was really the initial idea for Blinkist. And really quickly got excited, found a fourth co-founder, or technical co-founder, did a brainstorming in my old apartment over a weekend where we really wanted to go deep on the business model and what the product could look like. Spent most of the time just bonding and drinking beers, to be honest. But we on Sunday, once the weekend was over, we were sitting in a circle and asking ourselves the question: Is this it? Do we want to go all in? Do we want to go all in on this idea? And just within a second, the answer was yes. And so the week after, I went back to the office. I quit my job, I quit my apartment. We all moved to Berlin, And roughly 3 months later, we just were all like working out of a co-working space and starting on Blinkist. And yeah, probably going to talk more about the experience, how we did it. But yeah, I think it's so funny in hindsight because we just believed in it so much. We didn't know what we're doing, and like it was like we were pretty young still, so we didn't take a big risk there. But yeah, just like we didn't know what to expect, and then of course the first years were pretty tough, and we had to learn a ton in order to really get to the point where we are today.
So much to unpack there. I'll do it chronologically. So you started with 4 co-founders then, according to your story, right?
Yeah.
So why did you need that 4th one? I mean, technically you already started that with your second co-founder. You started already something in the past. Why not just him? Why not alone? Why did you involve a 3rd person and then a 4th person? What was like the mindset going in involving so many people, and how is it like to have so many co-founders?
That's a lot of good questions. So why 4? So the initial team, the 3 of us, we knew each other from university, and we worked together on several projects before, so we knew each other, and we kind of like were a good team because we covered the business side, we had a content side, we had a marketing side in it, and somehow it just felt right to start a company with the 3 people. To be honest, I didn't really think about too much like how many co-founders should we have or what is a good size of a founding team. There was pretty much like our first real startup in that sense. So like all these kind of like things that I learned afterwards I didn't know back then. So it just felt right to start with these 2 people. And what we noticed is that we want to build a digital product. We were pretty clear that we need to build an app. But no one of us was an engineer or had a technical background. So we knew in order to get an app to the market, we need a technical co-founder. And that is then how we ended up being 4, because then we searched for the technical co-founder who then later joined the team.
How did you find, this happens a lot. I mean, we have so many startups go through our event, and a lot of them are like, do you know a technical co-founder? And it's like, this is the most in-demand thing that I hear. How did you find, and how could you trust it? Because another question that keeps popping up as well is that if they find a technical co-founder, what if they run away with the idea? Because technically they can execute the whole thing. And then always this Mark Zuckerberg movie, The Social Network, pops up. So how do you avoid that nightmare, and how did you guys handle the whole search of it?
Yeah, so the search was actually pretty funny. So what we basically tried to write a job description of what this technical co-founder should be, and like everyone who has some idea about computer science or engineering probably would laugh at us because we just wrote down everything we thought we need. So it was like a super comprehensive description. And then we just sent it to friends, said, hey, we're looking for a technical co-founder. Do we happen to know anyone? And how we met him or how we found him was he was the former roommate of my co-founder's back then girlfriend, now wife's sister. So kind of like pretty random. And she said, hey, I used to live with this guy. I think he studied computer science in school. You want to meet him? I said, sure, we want to meet him. And so we all met in one place. Basically, everyone came because we were living all over the place back then. So we all met in Frankfurt in Germany because that was pretty much in the middle of everyone. So we all went there by train, just met for 2 hours, pitching the idea. And to be honest, back then it was much more like we felt we want to convince him rather than we are kind of like afraid that he would run away with the idea or something like that. Because we knew we need this technical person, and we're pretty confident that no one can just run away because with the idea, because it also includes a content play. And I always believed in this kind of like the synergy of skills. So that's saying, okay, he has the technical chops, but we know about marketing, we know about content, we know about product. So only together we can build something really, really valuable. And the Mark Zuckerberg example, of course, is maybe one of the very few examples where one person was able to execute everything. But normally I'm not that afraid of someone just stealing the idea, because the idea itself is worthless. The execution is everything, and execution needs more than one player, in my opinion. So yeah, that's how we found him. It was a pretty funny story, actually. Yeah.
And okay, I guess the question that pops up for me is, why not do it alone? Why? Because you were obviously working in M&A. Um, I'm assuming the idea popped up. Why was your first instinct, I need a co-founder? Is it because you wanted to start that journey with your old friends, or because obviously you said the bug caught you, you wanted to do it, and only then did you start finding your co-founders? Why just not execute alone?
Yeah, well, I think it never occurred to me to do it alone. I always loved working in teams, and as I said, I believe in this synergy of skills. And my co-founders, we were like very complementary in the skill set and the experiences we have or had. So, and we somehow developed this idea together. It was just like the initial starting point might have come from me, but it's like, it was not like I had this finished idea and I just looked for people to join me, but it was more like, hey, I want to start something, and here's a few thoughts, but what do you think about it? And the way we always work was like a lot of like discussion, conversation, debating, and just really trying to shape the ideas we have. And it's just like the way I always have worked. So it never occurred to me just to do it myself and alone.
I mean, that still shows a lot of self-awareness. A lot of people don't kind of know their weaknesses and strengths. But it sounds to me like you did something as a student or in your childhood where you were aware, okay, I really like this, I'm good at this. And so because of that, it's almost obvious that you'll get a co-founder. What was happening before this whole story that you started getting so self-aware, or were you self-aware your entire life?
It's a good question. I lack the self-awareness of when I got self-aware. It's just like I always liked to work in teams, and I think from a pretty early age I knew on what I'm good at and what I'm not that good at, and I think just like have a lot of friends and family being honest with you, saying, hey, you're doing this well, but that didn't really work out. There's not this moment where I say, oh, I noticed what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. It was just like, I think, a very natural process for me, and I have always been very interested in like reflection and like self-improvement. So it was just like something that it's just like second nature for me to think about like what I'm good at and what I'm not so good at. I'm not saying I always I'm perfectly self-aware. I also have my blind spots like everyone, and probably have some huge blind spots. But it's just like reflecting on what went well and thinking through why it didn't work well is something I've been pretty much doing for like the last 15 to 20 years.
Were you part of a student organization or something when you were studying?
No, I was part of this business that we started, but I think I was never really part of a student organization.
Nice. So with these businesses that you were starting during your student time, did you have like pretty big failures that were happening, or just things sizzled out?
So it wasn't a big failure, but it was also not a big success. It was more like a thing that like worked on a small scale, and probably we could have scaled it even further, but there was like definitely a ceiling to it. So we also were pretty clear to us that this is not the thing we're going to spend the next 20 years of our life on. It was a really cool thing as students, and it helped us to make some money, but also to gain a lot of skills and meet a lot of cool people. But it was not like something that was highly scalable.
Wait, what was the idea?
It was actually like talking about consulting was like a consulting thing in the end, pretty simply. And I think this exists in a lot of universities, but it didn't exist at ours back then, where you start a business and on one side you go to companies in the area and say, hey, I guess you have problems. Is there any problem we can solve for you? And then you start defining a project, and then you go back to your mates at university and say, hey, this company has this problem. I need a business person, I need a scientist, or like this and this and that. And then you start creating a project team and work on this project with a group.
Smart.
Yeah. And I guess you see, like this, by the way, it still exists like 10, 11 years later. It was just then like someone else took it over. And so it works, but like you can see it's not like something where you can like grow to hundreds of millions of revenue and customers. So it was really cool at that time, but nothing that I would spend my life on.
There's actually something really interesting that you said, because it does pop up also when I'm interacting with people. A lot of people are happy with just, let's say if we put numbers on it, getting like a bit more than a standard salary. And so it's almost like a freelancer mindset, I say, getting to like 6 figures, or like very high 5 figures. But then there's, I notice, especially among my friends, who start a startup and then exit them, there's a different type of mindset where it's like, how can I reach hundreds and millions of people? So I find that quite unique, interacting with many different people. I always notice that mindset is uniquely attached to an entrepreneurial type of person. So how do you where does that come from for you? Why do you need to go so big? Why not be satisfied with something nice that you set up in the consulting sphere?
That's the big question. A friend of mine just a few weeks back said, because I was talking about a new project I started, he's like, well, you never get enough. You always want more. And it's a really, like, when he said it to me, he's like, yeah, that's somehow true. But I don't know really why that is. So I think I've always was driven by creating impact and making most of the time that I invest in something. There's this funny saying, which is like something, I'm butchering it here, but it says that the difference between a big outcome and a small, or you put the same amount of time into a big and a small outcome, it's just like the one leads to a high outcome and the other one to a low outcome, but the time you have to invest is the same. So I think just like I want to leverage the time I put into something and then strive for a big outcome rather than just doing something that's small and satisfying. That's also cool, and I've done things where it's more about, just like, let's do it for the fun, and it doesn't really matter what comes out of that. But I think if I really go, and this is also why passion is so important, what I said earlier, it's like if I really go all in on something, then I also want to strive to have the biggest outcome or the biggest impact possible.
Do you come from a small city or a big city?
It's kind of like a medium-sized city, I would say. So it's
in Germany?
Maybe in Germany, yes, small to medium-sized.
So do you feel like if you were in a small city for Germany, I can assume, that kind of gave you the bug of, oh no, I want to go to Berlin and do something big?
Yeah. Well, I always knew from my childhood that I want to leave that city, and so far it has not occurred to me to move back. Although I still have like a lot of friends there, and I love to see them. But yeah, I was always kind of like maybe it was like something in the city which like drove me to get out of here, and yeah, it was like one of my motivations also then to study. It's like, okay, I want to leave the city. I want to kind of like be somewhere else. I want to explore like other cities, and I've always been very kind of like drawn to big cities. So I'm now living in Berlin. Before that, also like lived in Madrid for a while. So I think always I like to kind of live in these like big, very kind of like vibrant cities. So that's definitely was part of my motivation.
What's the difference between Madrid and Berlin if you'd compare it?
I said, like, someone asked me the question a few weeks ago, or like a few months ago, and I said there's not so much difference. Like, some of these cities feel very similar, and I know a lot of people from Spain and Madrid, they love to come to Berlin. The main difference they always say is like just Madrid is much cleaner than Berlin. But because they clean the streets every night. I think like the lifestyles are different though. Like the Spanish lifestyle it's so much, everything happens way later during the day. It's even more, people spend much more time outside together. I think Berlin is like very different than most German cities, where also you spend a lot of time with your friends outside. But Madrid is just like everything happens outside. Like people don't really spend time in their apartments. Everything happens way later. You have this kind of like tapas culture, which I always liked a lot, which is like a lot about sharing and just really connecting over the meal. So I think that's like one of the main differences. Although Berlin is not too far away from that. There's a lot of cool stuff also in Berlin. And also like what I think what's happening is that like the big cities in the world are getting more similar in a way. So you start really seeing pieces of every culture in every city these days. True.
Yeah, I agree. Although the weather, I'd say, is also
good
better
one.
in Spain.
That's a big difference, yeah. I've been thinking like the weather's for sure. Like
Have you never been attracted to a big city with close to the beach or something like that? Like close to the water, doesn't have to be the beach.
I always say Berlin would be the best place in the world if it was closer to the water or closer to the sea. The good thing about Berlin is you have like so many lakes, and that's awesome. But yes, I would love to spend more time at the beach and try to get out of the city and get to the beach as often as possible these days. If I find this place where you have like a really cool city with a lot of opportunity and a lot of brilliant people and interesting people, and it's by the ocean, then probably Lisbon is a city like that, but it's a little bit too far away from Berlin, then that would be the perfect place to live.
Actually, when we were first scaling my company, that was we started 7 years ago, and I think 2 years in we started scaling to another city. I actually came to Berlin for 3 months, and I was working out of in the city center. There's this Microsoft cafe. I don't know if you know it, next to like a big Volkswagen. So I was working pretty much out of that Microsoft cafe just to kind of get the vibe of the city. And there was this impact hub place where a friend of mine worked. And so we spent 3 months in that city just to kind of explore, see what's what. And eventually I decided it wouldn't really fit. And I wanted to be closer to the water, pretty much what we're discussing now. And so the next option was Amsterdam. We went to Amsterdam. For me, it was too touristy. My best friend lived there, so we kind of wanted to do Amsterdam, but it was way too touristy. And when you do business, for me, I want to be focused. So then I actually knew about Rotterdam, because I think like 5 years before that, I was there, and I had a gig that I needed to do. And so I decided to kind of explore Rotterdam because I thought it was this hidden gem in the Netherlands, and it's one of the most connected cities by train and airport, I think, in Europe. Very well connected. I think 6 hours by direct train to Berlin, and it's like 20 minutes from the beach. Like the metro or tram right outside of my apartment, it takes 25 minutes directly to the beach. So it's like super easy to get there, very well connected. So I can advise Rotterdam, check it out.
It's funny that you say that, because I looked at the Netherlands and especially Rotterdam as well, because it seems like a city where you still have like a really cool, vibrant city, but you have also beach life at the same time. So yeah, it's definitely on the list.
You check it out. Our office is there. You can always pass. Well, Corona, of course, so be careful.
Next time we do it in person, then.
Exactly. But I want to go back to the story because it's super interesting, and I really want to kind of dive deeper. So you go from, this big four, and then you decide to quit. And this pretty much sounds like the typical throw your backpack over the fence is a saying.
Yeah.
And I've had really bad experiences and stories of people doing that. I myself, when I was transitioning to become an entrepreneur, it was like I was having my full-time job, and in the evenings I was working on it, and at one point it was making so much money that I decided to just quit because I needed to allocate the time to the business. So I find that the stories that do that, it goes usually much more successful, and I've literally seen young entrepreneurs within 6 months crash and burn, get a job, or people that actually make it, looking back thinking, oh, that was a terrible decision. How was it for you? Was it really like backpack over the fence, or was it a gradual thing? Like, go through that experience.
Yeah, so I think there are like two stories to this. The story, how did I experience it back then, and how do I think about it today?
Exactly, yeah.
So back then it was really so we started thinking about like this, like kind of like starting a business again, and I think it got more concrete over like maybe a matter of 3 months. So we're still working full time at that point, and we already discussed that how we want to do that. Is there like something we want to bootstrap and we want to keep working and then just doing it at night, on the weekends, or is that something that we so strongly believe in that we're really going to focus 100% on that? And I think there's also like a matter of ambition and how fast you want to move. And once this idea got more clear for us and we really kind of started getting really excited, it was for us like really kind of like all in or nothing. So we are pretty clear, and there was like also a requirement for us within the group. We said, okay, everyone is either all in or you're out, because we felt that is an idea. It's this kind of like opportunity which is so clear for us, and of course, like we are pretty optimistic people. So, but it was very clear for us. We saw these trends and said, okay, no or never, and either we do it fully focused or we just can like go back to our old jobs. So it was just like when I think back how it felt back then, it was just like so obvious to me, so clear that of course I'm going to quit my job. Of course we're going to move to Berlin. Of course we're going to focus 100% of our energy and time on that. And we had saved a little bit of money from our previous job, so we knew we could at least survive for a few months or maybe like up to half a year. And then also like luckily found someone who started funding us very early on. But yeah, back then it was like really okay, like just a 30.
Wait, so you had an early investor as well, or how did that work?
We found someone then like very early. I think it's kind of like a combination of like really committing and going all in, and then like Destiny was like nice to us and like presented us a person that then also invested in the company. But that only happened after we took the decision to go all in.
But were you making sales or anything to go that all in into an idea?
We're making like actually when we went all in, all we had was a PowerPoint presentation.
Seriously?
Yeah. We had a PowerPoint presentation and a very shitty web-based prototype. And it was a prototype. We got even screwed over by a freelance developer back then. We asked them to build like something just to validate a concept for us. And he charged way too much money for what he delivered. But that was pretty much everything we had. We had probably written 2 pieces of content. We had a clickable website, and we had a pretty ambitious PowerPoint presentation and a very big vision. And that was everything we had. And so yeah, back then it felt right. I know a lot of people kind of ask me, "Are you sure you're leaving a good job here? You're doing well there. Why are you quitting a job? Why are you even thinking about starting a company? Just kind of like, don't do that." But back then I was I think never questioning that move. It was so clear for me that this is the way it has to go, and I was so convinced that we're going to be successful that I just felt we need to do that. And the moment, I thought also what is the downside here? The downside is we do this for a year, it doesn't work out. I guess with the experience of starting a company, I will always find a job again. So I found the downside to be pretty limited for us in that regard, and the upside, like big. So that was really the thinking behind it.
How old were you?
I think probably 26. So that's also we were like in this position. It also was like, okay, now you don't have any big commitments, you don't have a family. Like it's the only time when you can really do it. And also, I think also a benefit was because we just worked for 1.5 years. It's like we were not sitting on like huge salaries. We kind of like had good entry salaries, but it was not that we already having like making super big numbers. So I think what you left behind was not so big that it felt okay. You're really leaving something on the table that you probably want to have. And yeah, so that was the experience and the thinking back then. And of course, then a few years later, luckily everything worked out in the end. Although we had moments when like everything was pretty much falling apart. But of course, like you think like getting a little bit older and then like looking back, it's like what drove you there? Like where you were really kind of like in this like I was really in this tunnel. I was like I just wanted to go. And of course, like now in hindsight, it was a little bit naive, but. Well, like as Steve Jobs said, right? You cannot connect it forwards. You can connect the dots only backwards. And the decision worked out for me. Would I advise other people to do it the same way? I don't know. I think everyone has to decide that for themselves.
How brutal was the beginning? I know for me it was pretty brutal. So how brutal was it for you? You said, obviously you quit a job and you had almost half a year backup. And then the other decision that you took, you went to Berlin, which is probably much more expensive where you were living. So yeah, tell some stories.
Yeah, well, so Berlin, good thing was like back then was way cheaper than where we used to live. There was like 8-9 years ago, and the funny thing is when we started, because we moved to Berlin, we started like renting 2 places and we were sharing flats. So I was living with one co-founder in one flat, and the other 2 were living in another flat. And back then, we probably like you still paid like 500 euros per month rent, so that's great. Pretty cheap. That was pretty cheap. That was the good old times. And
how much is Berlin now?
It's probably the same place as now, 1,000, 1,200. It grew a lot back over the last years. Yeah, it was the beginning of like the reason we picked Berlin. Maybe that's interesting is. Germany never really had a startup ecosystem before Berlin, But in 2011, it was kind of like, it's like Berlin started emerging, and the first mobile companies out of Berlin popped up. There was Wunderlist by Wunderkinder, which was a pretty famous productivity app, and there were like a few other ones. And like the first magazines were writing about startups and about Berlin. And one of the reasons we moved to Berlin was like we wanted to be part of this kind of like emerging ecosystem. We felt that's the place where in the future all the startups are going to be, and we want to be part of. We want to be a player in this, like in developing this ecosystem. We want to be there from the beginning, and yeah, everything was like there was not that many startups as we have today, not the public tech companies we have today. So things were just cheaper, and it was just like a more calmer version of Berlin than what you see today. But yeah, so then the first time was like you go through this kind of like honeymoon period, I guess, in the first few months. You're kind of like super excited. You're super proud of yourself. Hey, we're starting a startup. Back then, it was like still something really unique and cool in a way. And today, I feel like everyone has a startup, which is great. I love entrepreneurship. But so yeah, we were kind of like starting and like also trying to be like a little bit kind of like trying to be a little bit cool, you know, like we got our skateboards and used the skateboards to drive through the office and put a freezer into the office with beer. So we kind of like living our own life, like feeling we're our own boss. We can now do whatever we want, right? It's kind of like the first time when your parents leave for the weekend and you're alone at home. It's like, okay, it's now my house here. I'm just gonna do whatever I want. So that was really kind of like a fun time. But then like reality hit pretty quickly, and what the first big crisis, so to speak, we had, and it was a really pivotal moment for us, is that we never built a digital product. So it was the first product we all built, and my job was to really think about the app and the concept of it, and we just got really excited. We looked at a lot of different apps that existed back then, Flipboard and a lot of reading apps. And we just put everything together we found and tried to create a concept out of that. And I remember the first concept I scribbled was like 64 screens. And every screen had like tons of functionality. And we said when we started, that we want to build an app and we want to launch within 6 months. We need to go to market as fast as possible because we need to learn. So with this in mind, think about like a 64 screen concept for the app. And somehow we just believed it worked. So we started, and at some point, my technical co-founder comes to me and said, like, hey, Niklas, we have a problem. I was like, what? Like, I cannot build all these screens. And my first reaction was like, why not? And he said, like, it's too many. And I was like, then just work faster. Oh. And he said, like, no, this is not how software development works. We need to break it down. It's just like, it's a matter of mathematics. We cannot build that much. I was like, oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Thanks for like bringing it up. So I went on a journey to kind of like boil down the core of our concept. And in hindsight, it's probably the best thing that could have happened to us, because it really forced us to understand, first to speak to real people, kind of like get and like really understand what is the core problem we're solving here, and how would a very lean, simple solution look like. And after a few iterations, we kind of like went from 64 to 10, and then even probably at some point to 4 or 5 screens. And like every day, I would just cross out features, saying, okay, we don't need this, we don't need that, we don't need this.
What were some of these features that it required so many pages?
It was like everything. We had this idea of a knowledge graph, and that would expand automatically as soon as you kind of like make progress. You could tap on everything, and it would just always open a new tree in a way. We had very sophisticated learning features, and we basically everything you can imagine in a product we put in there, and note taking and all that stuff, and very cool animations. And I think back then, because I didn't really I had passion for product, and I think I had a good instincts already, but I never really had kind of like I didn't understand the science of product management back then. And then I just like through kind of like starting talking to people, like learning, okay, it's really about like understanding your customers, understanding their problems, creating hypotheses, how you can solve them. And then at some point you really kind of like boil it down to what is the core of this product. And so yeah, we went from 64 to 10 to 4 screens, like crossing out features. And I still remember there was like just like one big feature left, and we were all very, very passionate about that. There was like a reminder feature that like once you finish something on Blinkist, like 3, 7, and 21 days later, it would remind you with like some extra content. And I learned from the user research I did is that people cared mostly about accessibility of content. They cared about like getting quickly to the content. They didn't really care about these learning features back then. So the last meeting we had to talk about the concept, we got in a meeting room and I had a whiteboard or like a flip chart, and I scribbled the current concept of the app on the flip chart and said, okay, this is how the app looks like. This is how the concept looks like right now. And everyone's like, yes, that's how it looks like. And I said, and then I took a red pen and crossed out this one feature and said, this is how the concept is going to look like tomorrow. And we started having a huge debate because no one wanted to give up that feature. But eventually we agreed, okay, in order to really be able to launch, we need to kind of like get rid of that feature. We need to give it up for now. And interestingly, in 8 years, we never built that feature. Because we just learned that it's not really what people care about. And so there was a pivotal moment because like when you look at Blinkist today, at a core, it is still the same product. And it's like, of course, a lot of things have changed and we added functionality, but the core has not changed in 8 years. And I always tell the story because like I know so many people that start with one idea and then pivot through like a lot of different iterations to like something that eventually works. And since we were forced to kind of like understand the core and really do a lot of validation user research because we didn't have the capacity to build like a lot of screens, I think that really helped us to really nail down the core, and this is why we didn't need to pivot over all of those years.
What is user research for you? Because obviously we've had in the past speakers from North Face, the global strategy head, and we had WWF. Every time I ask them, user research for them is like pretty much like a Unilever type of task, a huge corporate with like control groups. I'm assuming first couple of months startup, this is not the same. So what is user research for you? How did that look like?
So I have to be very careful because whatever I'm going to say, probably the user research team is going to be mad at me. But so the way we approached it when we started, there was a book that I read, or like it was a concept that was called customer development. And it was really understand your customer and then develop the solution for your customer. And that's how we approached user research back then. It's just like talking to people that we thought would be in our target group and ask them what problems they have and like try to get a feeling for what a solution could look like. So it was not like really scientific in a way. I created a script, talked to people either like in person or over Skype back then, just asking a few questions. And like I think one thing I noticed is that as soon as you talk to 5 or 6 people, you start seeing the patterns. And that's like really what we did. So like very low key version of user research, really looking for patterns, not like really looking for proof, because we didn't need to convince anyone. We just needed to convince ourselves. So I think one problem with user research often in big corporations is that you spend a lot of time creating presentations to convince management to take certain actions. But since we didn't need to, we just needed to convince ourselves. So we didn't really need to like keep a form. It was really about like spotting the patterns and then react to those patterns. I think today user research for me is twofold. There's of course a team of user researchers here also at Blinkist, and their job is to kind of go like create research projects with big questions and then find the right methodology to go after it. Is it a focus group? Is it a survey? Is it a diary study? There's so many different ways, and creating research reports that help us to make the right decisions. And that's a big part of how we make decisions. It's really, really important. And there is really important that you kind of like get it right, that you ask the right questions, and that you really create insights and not just information. And then the other user research part for me is still kind of like this connection to your customer. So, and this can be very informal, but just like talk to your customers because it builds intuition. Just like talking to your real customers, seeing what they're going through, what their lives are, what their stories are, helps me to kind of be close to them, and helps me with my intuition. Then when I have to make a decision, I can also rely a little bit on my customer intuition. I think what a lot of companies happens is that the founder in the beginning is very close to the customers, very close to the market, and then at some point just takes a step back, focuses on other things. A user research department takes over. But you don't make that great decisions anymore because the founder or the decision maker selects this intuition for the customer, and you start more chasing business ideas rather than solving customer problems. So for me, it's very important to stay close to customers to keep them in mind when I make decisions.
how do you do that at this point, many years later than your start in the startup world? Couple of million users, many countries. So it's a completely different experience. So how do you do that nowadays?
Yeah. So maybe also, like, to be perfectly honest, there were years where I didn't do any of that. So I was just like hiding behind my research and behind my data, and just like, oh yeah, I understand what they want because I just look at the research report. So, and I there were probably 2 years where I didn't talk to a customer, and that was really kind of like, I think, like really bad in hindsight. So how it works today is, like, the good thing about Blinkist is we have many people that love to talk to us. Always, whenever we put out a request for like to chat to a customer, we get tons of replies. And so we have a small research group, or like a beta group, that, like I said, roughly a few thousand people that signed up to be tester of early features and to respond to questions and be available for interviews. So that's one way to talk to people. But then also just like going to customer support, through tickets, and then just try to reach out to people and speak to them. And whenever a customer reaches out to me directly, I also try to have a conversation with them and try to engage with them. So I don't really have this kind of like very strict way how I do it. It's much more situational. And what I just know is, like, I want to spend time with customers, and that's and I'm always going to figure out a way how to do it. But when I do it, it's more informal. I want to get to know the person and hear how they use Blinkist, what the moments are for them, and I don't really have a research questionnaire that I'm going through. That is then what the research team is doing.
Before the whole craziness, were you also organizing events? Because I know for me, as we were growing and we wanted to get to know and stay in touch with a lot of people, we also started organizing events. To give back to the local community as well, so involving a lot of startups as well, and why we started startup funding events. So were you guys also looking into organizing events or something to stay in touch and see people?
So as a team, I think Blinkist is a culture that was built a lot on informal relationships, and one way we facilitated that over the last years is that we always had a lot of events. With a lot of office events, evenings, just like small parties, and we always had a quarterly team retreat where like for one day, where the whole team would go offsite for one day, and it was partly presentations and panel discussions to just get everyone up to speed what we're doing, but also a lot of room to connect. So we would do a lot of that, and then once a year we could go on a trip together. Like we went to Lisbon, we went to Greece, we went to gosh, where did we go? To many different places. Yeah. And so, of course, all of that's right now not happening. And also, to be honest, we haven't really found a good way to kind of like transfer this to the digital world. We're still trying to figure out how to allow the team to connect in a more remote setup as long as Corona, or as long as the pandemic is going on.
I can share some tips. We were sure. Moving away. So after our last big event, which was now a year ago, we decided that we wanted to move the team fully virtually and remotely. We had no idea what was coming. So this was June last year. It was purely a decision from a business perspective that if we wanted to, compete with the biggest and really grow exponentially impact-wise, because that's the currency that we count here, that we somehow needed to figure out to go fully virtual, remotely. And so we had a pretty big office, quite expensive, and then we kind of just decided in the process of, it took us 6 months to first release the whole remote thing to the team, and then another 2 months to the 6 months was to a first small part of the team, and then another month or two before the whole team took over. And so I can tell you, and we're pretty small. Like, I can imagine if you're like 1,000 plus people, it's very hard. But so what we noticed is, one, the office was not necessary, but conference rooms were. Pretty much anything that people are realizing now, and it's getting quite popular, we started realizing in those first 6 months. And so we needed meeting places, but not specifically, an office space. We needed a studio, so we realized, okay, we cannot completely give up the office. We need, a small space, a studio, a place where people can keep their stuff, come in the weekend. So very, very small studio space we kept. And then a bunch of conference rooms. I think in our office there's like 30 plus conference rooms that we share with
Crazy.
other companies as well. And so that allows us to keep growing without too much effort, but yet scale down all the other kind of costs. And then those costs could be then reinvested into, more remote stuff. And obviously we've been working on a lot of remote stuff. But I feel like the instinct for a lot of people when everything hit in February or March, the instinct was, oh no, how do we keep the event business alive? Whereas for me, it was very much like, it's going to be really stupid to go really fast right now. I know, for instance, at Apple, they don't release right away. They release when they know all the bugs are kind of out, and that the product's going to be great. So I kind of realized, okay, it's not going to be smart to go really fast, do events and half-ass it. It's going to be much smarter if we realize what's going to be unique in this new environment, because whatever we build now will last us for the next 10 years. And then when physical events come back, we can always go back to physical events because we have completely like structured that already. We have all the systems, all the people, all the knowledge. We build specific software just for physical events. So we can just pretty much maintain that without too much effort, and reignite it when everything's back to normal. But it's good to now figure out this part and not just rush it. And in the meantime, we're getting a lot of ideas, obviously, from a lot of people. But I can share some software at the end of the call with you.
There's a tool I recently used, which is called Icebreaker, which I really liked, where you just have like 5-6 minute conversations with random people, like not with random people, with people from a group. But it's just like this upbeat, always come like a new person. I really enjoyed doing that. So there are a lot of cool stuff coming.
I know that the Next Web, they have on their event, they have this feature called speed dating, and then every 2 minutes you meet someone. Internally, I know with our team, what we do, and also with our volunteer community, is chat roulettes. So every week, somebody from the community team pretty much sets up chat roulettes. So like you talk to somebody you haven't talked to or haven't talked to in a while, and you just don't talk about what you do. You talk about life in general.
Yeah.
And we also have a fitness group. So we sign up for an app. We use this app. I don't know if you've seen it, Center by Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were like, oh my God, this is so cool. We're people like that. So we were like, okay, this is so cool. We have to try it. If Chris Hemsworth is on, it must be true. Except Chris Hemsworth is like on one video. But so we got it, and we kind of just use it. We have a yoga room in the office, and lately we've been organizing some yoga sessions with the app and everything. And what I noticed is just a great way to bond, because everybody in that group is just like posting whenever they exercised. So that's the good thing about the virtual part. It's not like you have to come to this moment right now, we're doing yoga, or else you're not part of it. So it's always like a screenshot. Some people hike, take pictures of like, the forest, put it in there. We have, it got so good actually, I never expected it, that 2 weeks ago, 4 people from that group, including me, we ran the city marathon from Rotterdam, except only the 10K and not the whole marathon thing. But so there's like so many tricks we've been implementing in the last year just to fully figure out this whole remote thing. Because for me, I was doing it. I knew this was going to be the future of business. If we wanted to survive, if we wanted to scale, we were supposed to do Barcelona and Toronto this year. Like you could not have everything in an office. So there needed to be this infrastructure that properly needed to be figured out. And the thing that set me to do it was this book. Do you know the company Automatic that developed WordPress? So there's this book, I forgot the title, but it's A Year Without Pants or something like that. And the guy just literally talks about, how they structured the whole thing and how pretty much the whole reason for them was to not have an office except they also had an office that was always empty.
It's so funny because, like, you know, when we all went working remotely, when like Corona hit here in Germany, so I think everyone was like excited. Oh, finally, I can just like work in sweatpants. But I think what I noticed is like it's still like you need some like need to put on your jeans or like proper pants in order. Just like I think you need like the mindset is like if you just put yourself in sweatpants, then you're just gonna have a sweatpant mindset. So that was a big learning. But also what just like came to mind is like one thing and like the whole lockdown thing was terrible in a lot of different ways. But one thing I liked is this kind of like I was like reconnecting with a lot of friends, and we would play poker, we would play like games, we would have like Zoom chats, and I probably spent more time with friends I haven't talked too much to over the years during the lockdown, and it was we just would have these new routines, and it was so much fun. And interestingly, once like the lockdown was relieved and like summer came, this went away. But now, kind of like with Corona coming back, I already kind of see, like we already kind of start discussing again, should we play poker again on the weekend? And it was like one of the things I liked, and I hope that even after the pandemic, we find a good way to stay in touch and like just do things together, even if we're not living in the same city.
How did it affect your company? Because obviously, I can imagine it would affect it for the good, because people want to read more, want to do more. Obviously, Netflix and stuff like that went crazy. So how was it for you? And did it change something mindset-wise? Like, are you scaling down offices? Are you changing things?
Yeah. So how, like for us, it was not as positive as many believe. And the reason it was not so positive, like it was also not super bad. It was kind of like okay, normal. The reason why we didn't really kind of like saw like these positive changes is that yes, people had more time at home and they wanted to kind of like learn, but we are an audio product, and since people were not commuting anymore and would not go out, this use case for audio somehow disappeared in many people's life. And if you look at our data, when the lockdown started, you see like we had a very strong commute pattern. Like people would use it in the morning or in the late afternoon during the week. And when the lockdowns came, this pattern completely disappeared. So people would not use it in the morning anymore, and like all the engagement would move more towards the evenings into the weekend. So we didn't really benefit or profit from that, like Netflix or Amazon or Udemy did. But I think what changed definitely on the team side is that I think we have been very focused for the last 6-7 months to really deliver impact as a company, to try to be more productive. Of course, reorganizing a lot of ways of working, like working in a remote setup, has advantages when it comes to productivity, has disadvantages to productivity. So we really try to find a new way, and I think we have found a good way as a company to handle that and to work, still to collaborate, even though we're not sitting in the same office anymore. And then, of course, but also was very important to just like check in with people, because like when you're not seeing people in the office anymore, you also don't always know how they are doing and what's going on in their lives. So it was very, very important for us to always kind of like check in with everyone and just understand how they're handling the situation, because there were so many different things happening, just stress from the pandemic, anxiety, being worried, but then also the remote work. So we try to really handle that. And I think it made us, in the end, makes us a better company, a better team, a more productive team. I think also a more empathetic team. So that's a good thing. But yeah, it was definitely a very stressful, a very challenging time.
What are some like things that you implemented and do, and also what kind of software do you use to facilitate everything? Do you use things like Slack, WhatsApp? Like, what do you use? Yeah,
so the good thing is that we already worked very kind of like distributed before that. We had a very flexible work setup. People could work from home for a few days per week. So we already had like a lot of things in place, and we use Slack as our main tool. And I would say like even in the old in-office days, 80% of communication was already over Slack. Even though people would sit in the same office, they would Slack each other. So that was not too big of a change. And then we use Zoom, Google Hangout to collect for video chats. We use Asana to keep track of tasks and projects. And then we have Confluence for like to document all the information and the knowledge we have. And then Jira for the product development. So I would say that's kind of like our main tech stack or tool stack at Blinkist.
How do you like asana? I never fit. All my friends literally are like, you have to go on asana. I tried. I really tried. I just couldn't. So how do you like it?
I don't know. Maybe because of lack of better alternatives. I think I always like Asana because it's very clean and focused. It works for me. And the good thing is, like, it works really well with the team. I think they're like really focused not on like personal organization, but really on like helping your team to organize projects and backlogs and that stuff. I don't know. It just works. I don't have a magic trick I can share with you, unfortunately. But I always liked it. Like from the first day I saw it, I liked it.
I installed it, couldn't figure it out at all. Still can't. We started using also. We tried Notion.
Yeah.
Do you like it, Notion?
We had it as well. I think it's a cool product. But like if you want, I think it's not like really like I think it's more for small teams than for individuals. If you want to have like a proper knowledge base for a bigger company, that also gives you like some type of like some ways to organize the information to give access rights to certain people. Then we didn't find Notion to be good enough for that, so we went to Confluence. What I just noted, like the thing that has changed, and it's really spread like wildfire over the last few months at Blinkist. And I think it has changed the workflows of so many teams that's Miro. So this digital whiteboard, Miro.
Oh, I heard of that. What is it like? Can you tell me more?
Kind of like it's a digital virtual whiteboard. Very flexible tool. And like these days, and back in the days, you would get a Google document, like a link to a Google document or to something else. And now I just get Miro links all the time. So everyone is using these whiteboards, and they're really cool to collaborate remotely. They have like pretty much like feels like a proper whiteboard, and it's also really good to document information, to show flows. So that's a tool that spread like fire at Blinkist, and everyone is using it these days.
And so what do you use it then for like graphical stuff or also non-graphical?
We use it mostly for workshops. So when teams come together to workshop, then like in the office setup, you would have the whiteboard next to you, and you would draw and put posters on it. And now we do everything with Miro.
Oh, like that. That's I'm going to check that out.
That's really cool. To be like one of our product managers, she brought it in, and she already used it a year ago. And it's like, what is that? Do we need another tool? Because so I was like, hey, we have so many tools, and I love overview of what we're using. And I think over the last few months, I just really started noticing the value of such a tool, especially for teams that need to work together a lot. So it's
nice. Let's go back because we went sidetracked completely, but let's go back to, we just covered the beginning of the journey and everything. I'm very excited about the hurdles as growth happened. I know for myself, there were a couple of hurdles when we were scaling, especially as 6 to 13 people at one point we went, and then 13 people to, I think, more than 20. And especially that one really was hard for me. So you guys were obviously with 4. Can you go through, speed through the years a little bit and talk about the moments that stand out where you really, leveled up, where you had to deal with big stress, and can you share some?
Yeah, sure. So I think the starting point was just the 4 co-founders, and once we raised money, we got a few people supporting us, working students, interns, and a few full-time hires. But the team for the first few years was really just maybe 10, 15 people max. And that, of course, was was this time of experimentation, of figuring out what a product is, of figuring out what the marketing channels are, really finding this magic product market fit. And we rented an office, like a small office space, which was used to be an apartment, and we really made this our space. We had a kitchen, and just with 15 people, everything is so informal. You just everyone is sitting close to each other, so you don't need big structures. It was more like you work on product, tomorrow you work on marketing, and the next day we have to figure out how we hire people. So it was really doing everything, and everyone would just jump in and support on whatever was needed, and would work together, and we would have a lot of fun cooking dinner, doing barbecues, and spend a lot of time just as a group in the office. And that was, of course, like the good old days, as people say. But it was a really fun time because it was like so, just like it was just about making progress. We didn't care about any structure, titles, or career path, anything like that. It was really okay. We need to go to product market fit. How do we get there? And whatever needs to happen is going to happen. And then, like, we found this product market fit. We grew, and I think so. The first time, like, we grew and things worked fine. We had money. We raised a Series A. We had money to invest. We kind of like really started scaling. Revenue kind of like came in more and more. And with like around 40 people, we started noticing that the structure wasn't really working anymore. Until that point, we had been very self-organized. We had experimented with holacracy, kind of like just really informal way of working together. And with the 40 people, we started like really noticing that the system we had built or not built, because everything happened like very organically, started breaking. And I think one of the reasons it broke is because we had two cultures. We had a group of 15 or 20 that was with us from like the early days that like went through all the ups and downs of the first few years, and was just like in this kind of like hands-on, whatever needs to happen mode. And they were like really self-organized, took a lot of ownership of their work. And then the second cohort that we hired after we raised the Series A, I think they came in new, and we never really onboarded them properly to our organization because we also didn't know how to talk about it. And so I think there was like one group that just like said, see a problem, solve it, and the other one was like, okay, see a problem, how do we solve it? And we noticed we need to kind of like take a step back and really reunite us as a culture and as a team. And that was probably 3 or 4 years in, and it was the first time we started actively thinking about values. And it's very funny because today Blinkist is a very, very value-driven, behavior-driven company. But we never had values until like 4 years in. And one thing, and this is like really also like a very big pivotal moment, is one thing we did right back then, and I can say it was a good idea because it was not my idea, and I was actually against it. And lucky that I was convinced otherwise, because we said, okay, we need values. And my reaction was, okay, just let's go into a conference room, write them on a whiteboard, and then set them. And like what people like then, or like HR person back then said, like, I would advise that we do this as a team. Let's co-create that. And I said, okay, whatever. If we do it quick, then we can do it this way. And what happened then over a few months is really we started asking the teams, like, what is Blinkist for you? How do you like? How does it feel to work here? And over kind of like survey clustering, doing another survey, doing feedback rounds, we really distilled 7 values out of that. And when we kind of like with the final presentation of these values with the team, where we were going through the values, they were presenting them, and I said, well, it's interesting. I think that's exactly how it is to work at Blinkist. And that moment was like really for me this kind of like big eye-opening moment when I realized you always have a culture. If you actively develop it or not, there's always a culture that's somehow created by the behaviors you show. And I think good companies are aware of their culture, and they codify their culture. And what it means is you just have words to explain your culture, because then you can talk to your team about culture and you can say, hey, this is how we want to work and this is not how we want to work. And new people can get onboarded to the culture because you can tell them that's what we value and that are the behaviors we want to see in our organization. And it was really kind of like a big change for us, because I think we finally had a foundation that we can all work, that we can like really base on. And there was like then we started hiring more and more people, growing to 150. And I think now we're again at this time, what got us here, or like what brought us here, won't get us there. So we notice now that we again need kind of like to upgrade the way we work. We need to upgrade our culture. We need to be more intentional about our values, because I think for the last 2 years also things have just like we just got a little bit lazy on working on that and just let things happen. And then you start again creating a culture that you cannot control. So now again it's for us to really kind of like think about the company we want to be, the behaviors we need, and work towards that. So I think the big lesson for me is like culture is something that should always be top of mind from day one, and you should always try to actively work towards the culture you want to have, and then codify it so that you have language that you can use to explain and discuss this culture.
Nice. So then for you, two pivotal moments, which is around the 40 people mark and now around the 150, 160 mark.
And I think like they say 30, 150, 300 are these kind of like breaking points. And I always thought that's just like business book bullshit. But it really happens. It's very interesting. It starts slowly, and you first think, it's not that bad, and at some point it really hits you hard.
How did it hit you hard? What was happening?
I think it's just like you notice that you're not aligned anymore. You start talking about things that don't matter. Instead of solving a problem, you start discussing how should this problem be solved. And as a company, like our biggest risk is not making mistakes. Our biggest risk is becoming irrelevant. So I would always optimize for quick decision making rather than discuss every decision 100 times without getting to the point and start like really working on it.
How do you do that with 150 people or 160 in your case? What do you do now? I mean, it sounds very cool and Silicon Valley-ish, 7 values and everything. But what are like real strategies or I like this book by Sam Carpenter called Work the System. And he describes that you need, there are different types of systems, like hardware, software, people are also a system within a company. So I always define these type of problems by, what can we use as a strategy, as a system to make sure that these values happen. So do we buy something? Like, for instance, our entire company runs on Mac, not Windows, even though in the beginning, we didn't know if that was going to change much, but it did. So that's hardware. Software, communication channels become important, like Slack. What are things you do, especially at that amount of people, to make sure those values keep?
Yeah, I think first it starts with the clarity on like what are the values and what do they mean for us. And I think values are nothing else than what do we value as a team, as individuals? So what is important for us? And that's like, it's important to have clarity, but of course, like just putting your values at a wall won't change anything. Because in the end, what values should create is behaviors. And the way I always think about this, there's a really good book, it's called Change the Culture, Change the Game. And what the key inside of the book is basically you have a behavior pyramid. And on top of the pyramid, the outcome is a different action, or is an action you want to see. And what we as humans often do is like we see something that we don't like, and then we just tell a person what they should change. And then the other person says, oh yeah, cool, thanks for the feedback. I'm going to do it differently. And you do it differently for 2 days. But then you kind of go back to your old way of doing it. And what the book says is that you have to basically work from the bottom to the top of the pyramid. And at the bottom of the pyramid is kind of like is a belief. The belief is in the end driving your action. So you have to change the belief, and you're going to change the belief through creating experiences. And experience can be a tool you use, can be software or like hardware you buy just to make a statement, can be a story you tell. But you have to kind of like really create an experience where people start like questioning their own beliefs, and through this questioning and changing of beliefs, you will start seeing different behaviors. So for me, culture and creating behaviors is a lot about like clarity in the first place, and then a lot of storytelling, creating the right experiences through coaching, through presentations, but also through feedback sessions, for example, for people to really understand what it means and like questioning their own beliefs in order to update them, in order to show the actions or the behavior that we as an organization value. So it's a little bit more complicated way, but I think it's the most sustainable way to. And then it's a lot about talking about it, showcasing good examples. Also maybe speak about examples that didn't go well. And I think the most important thing in the end, it always starts with you. It always starts with the leadership of the company. So you have to role model. You have to like live up to your values every day. Because if you don't live up, you cannot expect anyone else to live up. So I think that's also the most important thing that, you just have to kind of like stay true to it and role model the values for your organization.
What was that book called? Because it sounds super interesting.
It's called Change the Culture, Change the Game.
Do you know the author of it, or?
I don't know the author of it now. But,
never mind. I'll just.
It's on Blinkist.
I love what you just said because I never could have phrased it until you phrased it for me, and it just makes so much more sense, which kind of, gets my thoughts together. Instead of giving feedback, and we have feedback sessions as well, it's more about questioning the belief behind it. Because I've noticed the people that do the changes the most and actually change for the better are the ones where I usually would have asked the question, just like, why this? Why are you thinking like that? And then yeah, so smart. I never thought about it that way.
And it's really like us. Like I work with a leadership coach, and like sometimes just like, and he's just mirroring me and just asking questions, and like at some point you just come to a point where you realize, gosh, I really believed this for like my whole life, and that was kind of like really driving so much of my behaviors or my impatience in certain things. It's like, and now like being aware of what was the kind of the core belief, I can decide, do I want to keep it or do I want to update it? And it just often that really leads to kind of like, okay, yeah, now I'm aware where it comes from, and now I can actively work on it. Because I know I'm an impatient person. If you tell me, hey Niklas, you're impatient, stop being so impatient, I say, yeah, you're right, I should be more patient. And 2 days later, I'm going to be they're going to be exactly the same again. But knowing where it comes from, or like where it comes from in certain situations, gives me the awareness and then also the tools to, or like the clarity to work on it.
When did you start deciding you needed help? When did you start looking towards mentors, leadership coaches, and how's that experience been like?
Yeah. So I never had a mentor. I think my mentors were like on the one hand books, especially in the early days of Blinkist. I tried to read every book on product development I found, on design and user experience, and I found like, because you can tap into, instead of one person's brain, you can tap into many people's brain through reading books. So that was always like very important for me. And then of course I would have a network of other founders and people, and I would just like talk to them. So, but I had never this one person I would go to for advice, saying, hey, here's my problem, can you please help me to think through that? With coaching it was a little bit different. I think I noticed that a few things, I felt like, okay, I think there's more, I have to work on myself in order to get a better version of myself, to be a better leader at Blinkist. And I read a book, The Coaching Habit, I think, and just like, oh, cool, maybe there's something to it. Because I started using coaching techniques with my employees and my one-on-ones, and I thought, okay, maybe I need someone also to do this with myself. And I just like then started talking to people, noticed a lot of people work with coaches. I think in the US it's pretty common that you have a leadership coach. And in Germany it's still a bit like, oh, a coach is more like, oh, you see a coach, do you have problems type of thing. And in America it's like, of course I see a coach. How can I handle all these things that I have to deal with every day without a coach, without someone I can talk to? So became clear for me, okay, I want to work with a coach, talk to a few ones, and chose the one where I felt that the chemistry is best, and have been working with this person now for 2 years, and has been really, really impactful for me on a personal development level, because I learned a lot of things about myself and like noticed these kind of like beliefs that I have. But also it's just like good to like have someone that you can just talk to when you have like certain struggles, and just help. He helps me just to structure my thoughts. He's not giving me advice. He's just like helping me to structure my thoughts.
How did you go about finding the right coach? And was it someone who built a business as well, or what kind of person is a coach like that?
So how it went again, very similar how we found our technical co-founder. I just asked people, hey, I'm looking for a coach. Does anyone know a good coach? And then I got a few people. I had some criteria in my mind. I'm not this kind of like checklist person. It's not like, okay, here are the 5 things I need to see and I'm going to check them off. But for me, it's more, I have a rough idea what I'm looking for, and then I'm just going to talk to people, and then in the end, like either it clicks for me or not. But one criteria I defined was, if possible, I want my coach to also have experience in building a business or leading a company. And because, like, I don't know, like a lot of athletes say they want to be coached by former athletes. And I think the reason, and I had to say, if I want to be coached by a former business person. And the reason for that was just like, my idea that maybe he understands me a little bit better. Because he went through the same things, and he just can, like, it's just more like he just understands me. And if I ever need advice, I can also go to him and say like, okay, I know you're normally my coach, and you would never tell me what to do, but here I really want to get your perspective on it. So that was one of my most hard criteria, and then eventually found this person that I'm working with now.
So you found them through family and friends then, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
So can I quickly ask how the background was of this person? Did they have an exit, or were they just...
So yeah, he worked at a big company in the pharmaceuticals industry. He led, I think it was roughly 250 people team, big revenue. So he was he's not a startup guy. He is more a more corporate CEO type of person, but still very experienced leader.
And so how, you don't have to name the numbers, but how expensive is a person of that caliber to coach you then?
I would say it's worth it. How expensive it is? Well, it's a few hundred hours per hour, a few hundred euros per hour.
So we're not talking thousands. We're talking pretty much a bit more expensive than a therapist or something.
Yeah. So I think what I've seen, but that's German or European prices, is that the range is something between 150 to 500 euros per hour.
Cool. And then you do it once a week, I'm assuming, or do you?
It's more once a month. It depends.
So it's just once a month.
Yeah, I think it changes a little bit on the topics. So when it was more about self-development, we tend to have longer periods between, because there was a lot of things that I just got out of that meeting and I wanted to drive change first. And when it's more tactical, then it can also be, I can call him anytime. He always says call me anytime you need, you want to talk. And so it's also a little bit more ad hoc than sometimes.
Okay, so a question that might pop up then is, why not create an advisory board, or you have investors, why not talk to them? I'm pretty sure they'd be willing to mentor or help. Why specifically get a coach?
So I think I want both. On the one side, I want get as many people as I want the difference I see as a coach is not an advisor or not a mentor. A coach is someone who's a thinking partner for me. And a coach would not tell me what to do. A coach would lead me to the conclusion I need to get to a certain point. And a coach is it's neutral. So they don't have a stake in the business. They are not part of the business. So they're completely objective and neutral. But then at the same time, if I have a certain challenge I want to think through, then I also want to get opinions from other people, and then I talk to investors, to friends, to other people. And that is then, but these are more subjective, and I just going to collect all these inputs and then distill them into my own opinion or point of view.
I love that. I never considered a proper leadership coach. Obviously mentors, and I pay for mentorship programs and stuff like that from people that helped me in the past grow the business. But a leadership coach, it almost sounds like a therapist who actually went through what I went through. And so obviously, I always advise one of our charities is focus on people who are burning out. And there it's the main thing, hey, make sure to go to a therapist, even if you don't have anything, just to get it out. But lately I've been feeling when we give that advice to people who make, pretty large companies happen, the therapist, they don't really understand what's happening. And so even though it's just a reflection that they need to give, it's still not the same. So this is really interesting. I never really thought about leadership coaching that way.
And there's this book, The $1 Trillion Coach, which is about Bill Campbell, who used to be the coach for the Google founders, for Sheryl Sandberg. And there's this really cool scene in the book where Eric Schmidt, who used to be the CEO at Google, so Bill Campbell says, Eric, you need to get a coach. And Eric says, I don't need a coach. I have run companies for 20 years. I know my stuff. And then he asked him, Bill, and he says, Eric, do the best athletes in the world have a coach? And he says, yes. And then he says, why should you as the best CEO in the world not have a coach? And it really clicked. So yeah, of course, in sports, it's every top athlete. They can, the best tennis player, the best runner, the best player in the world, they all have a coach. And for them, the coach is the most important ingredient to their success, next to their own discipline. And in business, it's kind of like still coaches. Oh yeah, like you really need a coach. Why would you need a coach? So I think it's like really you have to. That's like a belief that you have to update that a coach is there to make you even better, not to fix your problems.
Do you feel the effect in your business, as in growth, like actual numbers, when you have that coach, or is it more that it stabilized your stress?
I would say it probably leads to better decision making. I cannot really connect these sessions and my learnings to numbers. I think that's also not really the point. I think it's really on not working on yourself, and the belief if you work on yourself and you get a better leader, then also like results will follow. I'm not sure if they're going to follow right away or a little bit later, but I'm pretty sure they will follow. But like sometimes change needs time, so it's hard to connect these two things.
Yeah. There was another thing that I want to discuss. So pretty much the same journey, but from a different lens, and more from a financial lens. Again, you don't have to name numbers, but it's still pretty interesting. When you first started out, you obviously mentioned you had the 6-month runway. When was the first time you started actually making sales? How was that experience? And then when was the decision made to really go for a seed investment or Series A investment? And so when that amount of money came on the bank, how did that change? Can you lead the journey, talk about that journey?
Yeah, so we made revenue pretty quickly. So I think I said earlier, we had this plan of like launching within 6 months. And one big hypothesis we had is that we need to prove willingness to pay from day one. We always had this idea, if we want to build a successful content product, we need to prove that people are willing to pay for it. Because we never thought we can really monetize and grow this through ads. So we made revenue from day one, because the first version of Blinkist already had monetization. So you either did a subscription or you could buy blinks on demand. So the first revenue was calculated on day one, and it's very funny because we spent weeks like building our financial models and like really making assumptions on how we're going to grow, and we really thought we were just gonna explode, because we believed, hey, we have this problem, everyone else is gonna have this problem. People are just gonna buy this product. All we have to do is just put it out. And I think after the first day, we had 5 or 6 customers that back then, because we had like intro pricing, resulted into 15 euros of revenue. And it took us 11 months to get from these 5 to 100 customers. So that was a really, really, really slow journey. And so yeah, you can imagine for the first year, the revenue was like in the thousands maybe. So there was not much revenue coming in. But luckily, like I said earlier, we found this kind of like seed investor who believed in the idea, who believed in the team. So they financed the first 1.5 years. And then things like slowly started growing. So we raised another round of seed investment. And then in 2015, I think it was, there was like the third year of Blinkist, we started cracking it. We started like starting understanding how we can grow the business, and I think it was the first time we reached €1 million in revenue. And it was also the time when we raised our Series A. And then with like the Series A, like I think €5 million that we raised, then we could really kind of like put the foot on the gas pedal, like started scaling, and since then have been growing really fast over the last few years.
What happened that you cracked it? Like I know for myself that it's usually like a moment of realization, and then the implementation obviously takes a bit longer. Yeah. But like, what cracked it?
I think it was 2 things that cracked it, and one was product, and the other one was marketing. So the product thing that cracked it was audio. We introduced audio, I think, in 2014, and it was a little bit before the big podcast boom. But speaking to customers, or like to potential users, we very early on learned, especially from American users, that they loved the concept, but they wanted to have audio, because they spend a lot of time in cars, and said the only time I can read or listen to something these days is when I drive. So we knew very early on that audio might be the game changer for the product. It still took us 2 years to do it, because it was like, oh, it's just like so complicated, it's going to cost money, and we have to change the product, and we have to record all this content. But at some point, because we're running out of ideas what to do, we said, okay, like this, like let's give it a chance. We don't have any other idea. We just have to do that. So there was, and then I think it made the product more valuable, and it opened up the product to a new market segment with audio. So that was the first thing that cracked it. And the second thing that cracked it was just like understanding how paid marketing works. So like for 2 years we just like were like doing it like in a very unstructured way, but then we started like collecting data, being more structured, like being more thoughtful of how we want to do it, like measuring results, and then over thousands or like hundreds of small iterations got to a point where we were able to acquire customers through paid marketing. And I think then we had this product that was like ready to be sold, that was ready to scale, and we started having a marketing channel and finding the right people for our product. And this is really, I think, these three things together cracked it then. And it's just like, it was this moment where we saw like every week we would spend more on marketing, and every week we would get more out of that spend. So we becoming more efficient week over week. And that was really when the machine started working, and it was like, okay, we just need to raise more money to put more money into the machine to start to grow even faster.
So how, a lot of marketing people probably listening and thinking, what was the budget like that you put into it to figure it out? And how many iterations of these ads were you doing, and which platforms? I'm assuming Facebook or Google, or?
It was back then, so platform was back then, I think only Facebook. Because we didn't see much search traffic for our product, because it was a product that like a category that didn't exist 5 years ago. So no one would go on Google to search for that. So we needed to have a push channel, and it was Facebook. So it was only Facebook. How much budget? It was like, I think the first experiments in the hundreds, then maybe at some point 1,000. But I think overall we probably never spent more than 200,000 euros on like the whole journey to get to the scalable point. So it's still a lot of money, but like not crazy numbers. And then iterations, well, like too many to count them. I think that is like paid marketing is really, it's a numbers game, an iteration game. So you have to always keep trying. And it's like you have the creative, you have the audience, you have different bidding systems, and just like finding the right combination of all these things. And you have an onboarding and conversion flow in your product. And I don't know, at some point it just worked. And it's very hard to say it was like 5 or 10, but it was definitely a lot.
No, I get that. That's pretty cool. Especially that moment where you said, okay, now the machine started working. It sounds really exciting. I think with our event, which again is not even my business because I have my own business, and this was more like a giving back way.
Yeah.
And then when we first launched, and then suddenly started getting these calls to do other events, and at one point getting so big, it just, we didn't even realize that we cracked it until it like, I think for me it was really upon reflection when I looked back, realizing that we pulled it off, that I was like, holy moly, what happened here?
And I think I agree. It's not so easy to talk. Oh yeah, that was the moment. Talk about it. This was the moment where we found product market fit. But being in that moment, you didn't really like notice. Oh, we have product market fit. It was more one thing led to the other. Oh, we can like invest more, and maybe we should start talking to investors. And then one investor said, oh, it's pretty cool what you're doing. How can you scale that? And then like suddenly you have the money in the bank. It feels great. You also feel like somehow a little bit like it gives you some feeling of confirmation that you're on something. I know raising money should not should be used as validation for your business model, but still it feels there's someone else believing in you, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. And it just gives us this motivation, the strength, and of course also like the peace of mind having 5 million in the bank to go a little bit more aggressive and try to grow faster.
Yeah, I like that. What do you, in the beginning you said that it's part of your personality to also like go a bit more focused and stuff like that. How does that apply to your personal life? Like, do you do sports? Do you feel like you're the same when you do sports? Are you leading a lot when you're outside? I noticed that when I'm not in business, I pretty much shut down. It's like turning off the leadership, and I literally take 0 decisions. So I like being led when I'm outside of business. So how is it like with you outside of business?
So I think like I'm not sure if like I'm a very different person outside and inside the business. I think I'm in general also like a very curious person, and I think you see my curiosity in the business because I always kind of like find new things that are interesting and share them. And the same in my personal life is like I like to kind of like fall into these rabbit holes, and every few months I fall into a new rabbit hole. And my girlfriend, she's always like, "Oh, a new obsession." He's kind of like he's something new, and she know. And it's like I start talking about it. It's like, all right, okay. Next 3 months I'm going to hear about this topic. And so I think like I have like lots of interests, or can change, or I also move on to new interests, but like I would go really deep and go really focus on these things then, and then I also can annoy people a lot because I just cannot stop talking about it.
Same here.
So, but I think that's kind of like, but I think I have the same personality in the business and in my private life. In terms of leadership, that's a good question. I don't think like I'm like not shutting off and just gonna be led. I think I still make decisions, but I think it's a little bit more. I think the personal life is often a little bit more compromise and finding a solution that works for everyone. And I think in business is often like listening to people, but then still making a very clear decision and not going for consensus, but for a clear decision that everyone follows.
Yeah, to bring the mission forward, I guess.
Yeah.
And what are some of the obsessions that you're like recently into? I know for me, we actually just recently hired a Tesla. We rented a Tesla, and I was like not like super into these things, but we drove it on autopilot on the Autobahn because I'm in Germany right now. And holy moly, what a different thing it is. Such a different world. I live in a city, so I don't own a car. I don't have a necessity to own a car, but just I'm getting really obsessed and noticing I'm falling into the rabbit hole about learning and comparing these cars. I don't even own a car. It's not necessary, but we have the Tesla right now parked outside, and I'm just like, holy, like I want to drive. I never want to drive.
Shut up, Niklas. I need to drive my car. So I think like what I'm recently very interested in, and like also like sometimes obsessions come and go and they come back. And I think one thing, like there's one theme that like one topic that I'm kind of like always go to, then I go somewhere else and then go back to it. And I think it's this topic of investing and value investing especially. And so right now I'm like really kind of like really curious and interested in value investing and the whole concept of understanding companies, understanding their value, and finding the companies that are like trading below value. Reading a lot of Warren Buffett right now.
What is value investing? What does it entail? And can you give some examples?
Well, value, like, so people are gonna like, so that's first, it's a very passionate community. So people are gonna kill me because I'm probably not gonna represent that well. But I think value investing for me in a nutshell is to, so there's like, you're either a value investor, and it's like you look for stocks, for example, that have intrinsic value below the current market price. And you say, at some point, the market will understand that this company is worth more than what it's trading for right now. So I'm going to invest anticipating that the price will grow. And you normally look for companies that are trading at like lower multiples. And then you have growth investing. That is kind of like you just invest into companies that are growing really fast, but at like crazy prices. So you go for Zoom, or you go for a lot of SaaS businesses which are trading 30, 40 times revenue, sometimes even. When you think like rationally about it, if you buy a company at 40 times revenue, it will take you 50 years or whatever to return your investment. But they base this on the assumption that the companies will keep growing and the market will value growth, and therefore the stock price will grow. And so value investing is kind of the opposite to that. And I like both sides, but I think value investing is a little bit more of a science to it, I feel. And Warren Buffett is probably the best example of that. Finding companies that are undervalued, taking big positions in these companies and holding them for a long time. And Berkshire Hathaway is a great example of how you can create a lot of value for your investors over a long time. So I find this really interesting because it's a also intellectually very stimulating topic. You think a lot about like valuations and about like how to assess a company, think about modes and what can go wrong. So I love that topic right now and reading a lot of books about it. And also trying myself out as a value investor from time to time.
So how do you, can you share some tactics on how do you find a good value investment?
Or so I'm not that advanced that I have a very good tactic. What I would say is if someone is interested in that, I would definitely start, I would just read there are many Warren Buffett biographies. I would read either Warren Buffett, the biography, or Snowball, one of these two. I think it's the perfect intro to value investing.
Is it on Blinkist?
Snowball it is, I think, yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll check it out.
And it's one of the topics, and yeah, it's like it changes from time to time. I also have been there with the car thing. There's like something I was like very interested last year, self-driving cars and that stuff.
Nice. What is like health-wise going on for you? Because obviously, I gained. I remember I gained. Well, I'm still at that weight, although I'm dropping it. But I gained 10 kilos in the process of us growing, and having been focused on the company. I noticed that now growth is very automated, and people are really awesome at what they do. So I tend to do less, and we still grow, so I'm very happy about that. But in the process, I gained 10 kilos, and now obviously I'm in the process of losing it. How was that process for you? I mean, look healthy still, so how did you handle the whole thing? Do you do exercise? How's the food like?
Yeah. So I think it's also ups and downs, and I've gained probably never 10, but maybe 5 or 6 kilos, but also probably I had a higher starting point than you. So gained and lost, and right now I think I was like somewhere in the middle. And I think also it goes in cycles. So there are times when I do a lot of exercise. Right now is a time where I'm not doing that much, to be honest, and I want to go back to it. I don't really have this kind of like strong habit or rhythm. It's more, yes, I do a lot, or then I don't do anything. And every time when I do nothing, I feel like I have to do something more. So I still try to find my perfect exercise routine and habit that I can just keep going for the rest of my life. I do a lot of, also like the same with meditation. I've done a lot of like meditation for a long time. Right now is a time where I'm not really kind of like finding the time to do it, and I know if you don't find time, you have to do it. You definitely have to do it. But yeah, somehow it doesn't really fit into my life right now. Also, we just became a father roughly a year ago, so my life has changed a lot. My life has changed a lot, so still trying to kind of like reorganize my routines.
What's that like the first year?
Oh man, it's crazy.
Well, actually, what's it like with the pregnancy and then first year with the whole business going on?
Yeah. So good thing is that it happened now, like where the business already kind of like a little bit more mature, and where there's a team in place that also can cover for you if you go out for a while, or if kind of like your mind is somewhere else. The pregnancy itself, we are lucky. It was kind of like most of the time smooth, so there was nothing to worry about, or like something that really completely distracted me. So I could like focus mostly on the business and on my girlfriend. But it was not like really like there was no fire burning on either of these two sides.
So no need to run in the middle of the night to a supermarket to get Ben and Jerry's or something.
No. That's and I think that would not be a problem. I think I'm very happy to do these things. And I think now with the kid, so I think a good thing is like I took 4 weeks off after the birth. Like so I was really kind of like trying to go off for 4 weeks and really just kind of like be with the family. I think that really like helped me also to really focus on the family, also like to bond with the child, and also to have a nice weeks. So because these first weeks, of course, are very important, and also like everything is new and so weird. Suddenly someone is there and like just comes out of nowhere. Actually, like not of nowhere, but like it feels like it comes out of nowhere. And so I had a team that could cover, and when I came back. I try to really find like changing some of my work styles and just try to find a better balance. Starting working a bit later so I have time in the morning with the kid, or like finishing a little bit earlier so that I have like the evening with the kid. And then when Corona came, like pretty much like because I was working from home, like there was definitely like a complete new way to it, a new quality to it, because I was like working from home all the time, so the kid was always around. And I would just try to balance these two things really well, as good as I can. And like there's also a positive thing I feel like in hindsight about Corona for me personally is that I was at home, and I think the first year is so important and there's like so many changes. So I was lucky and fortunate that I probably have been around more than I usually would have, and I just like saw more things and experienced more things with them.
Do you feel, and would you advise that as well, to do that later in the business career? Do you feel like, did it make you less productive? Did you, how was the sleep part of it?
Oh yeah, the sleep part was a nightmare.
How long was
really,
it a nightmare? Like, does it get better at one point?
Hopefully. It recently got better. Like a few weeks ago, it got better. But until then, it was really like it was probably the good thing is like I'm at least for a while I can run. I don't need that much sleep, or at least I tell myself I don't need that much sleep. So it was not really affecting my health or my productivity. But of course, it's still a struggle. If I would recommend to earlier or later, I think it's really, really difficult. It depends on the situation, on of course also like on the relationship and that stuff. So I'm very lucky that I have a partner that she takes care of a lot of things also for me, and I'm really grateful for that. So that I can also then put a focus to the business. Therefore, it works for us really well. I think that like it's really hard to make a general statement. Do it earlier, do it late. I think in hindsight, probably you should have done it earlier because it's
earlier. Really?
Like just like I think it's such a cool experience to raise a child. So I was like sitting there the other day. It's like, why did I wait so long?
But so you didn't lose any productivity in doing, because you say you do less hours, and in the beginning, obviously, you did a lot of hours.
Well, I think I'm not doing necessarily less hours. It's more like I structure them differently, and then I will probably go back at night. But then also like maybe that what I work less is then I just like be even more focused on with the hours I do. So like I didn't feel that that the business or like my role suffered from having a kid. And
really, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I
Maybe
know that's
of course,
a big topic.
Yeah, well, of course, the first month, like of course you settle in, everything is different. So of course, also like your mind is somewhere else, your priorities are different. But I think as time goes by, you start like going back to your routine. And I'm not the first person who runs a business and has a child. So many people before me did that.
Of course. A question that popped up, also from me, interest. Have you ever dealt with things like, or gotten close to burnouts, or have dealt with it within the team of Blinkist? And can you tell more about that, if you dealt with it and how you kind of went through it, whether it was with you or with someone else?
Yeah. So I think I've never had a burnout in a way of like also don't have a perfect definition of what a burnout is, but I definitely also have these emotional highs and emotional lows. So times where like things were really easy and just everything flows and just wake up, you know what to do, and like time flies by and it's already evening and it's like, gosh, great day. And then there are kind of like weeks and like or days and weeks where like you feel like, oh, like okay, today I'm not really feeling it. I have to motivate myself a little bit more. Luckily, I never had to kind of like force myself out of bed. I'm kind of like always like, okay, let's see what the day brings. So I think I'm pretty lucky that I think never had like any kind of severe issues with that. But then I think these times when things are not as easy or don't flow that much, I always try to remind myself why I'm doing it. And I think as soon as I go back, this is why the passion is so important. Like my work gives me a lot of meaning. I'm really passionate about what we do, and like if I have days where I don't really gosh, I would I don't want to do this. If I just remind myself why I started this in the first place, then I think often the motivation comes back and I get over it pretty quickly. So that's how I deal with it. But I know that maybe I'm like pretty fortunate that my lows are not as low as other people's lows. And
I mean, that's what you need as an entrepreneur. You need to be more stable instead of feeling the highs and the lows very hard.
Yeah,
that's how I learned it.
Yeah,
although I'm struggling with that sometimes.
Really?
I experience it very hard, and I noticed maybe like 4 or 5 years into it, when the highs became very high and the lows very low, that I was like, okay, I need to stabilize here.
Yeah. What did you do?
Well, I can tell you that for me, it was more like an experience of leveling up. It's kind of like I used to do chess, and then at one point you just kind of hit a level, and it's weird. Something switches in your brain, and suddenly you can do higher levels. So for me, stress was a similar experience. It just at one point the stress got so big that it just turned off. I really can't explain it better than that. It just
Crazy.
stopped. And then suddenly I used to get some symptoms as well due to stress because I had a pretty rough past. But and so that's partially why I chose entrepreneurship, because I thought, well, it couldn't be worse than my past. I was very wrong. It's very tough. But what I just noticed is like at one point the stress becomes so weird. Like I used to live off of, what was it, like 13 or 15 euros a week. That was my food budget. And then when I was a student, I completely lived alone and without parents or anything. So for me to go from that to sometimes there are numbers that are happening, payroll that is happening within the company that I think like, holy shit, I could live like years off of this thing. And so it becomes so unfathomable in my brain that it just stops thinking. Just there's no stress anymore. So I don't know how to explain that. I just noticed that it needed a while to take over. And to level up in that stress level. I didn't know you could level up in stress. And then also had a great mentor. So I would go to Amsterdam, which is like a 40-minute drive on the train. And I would just have talks with him like you had with your leadership coach. And he would just give me perspective. And at one point you just start getting so much perspective that you just zoom out and just that becomes less personal.
That's I think it's like really kind of important to take a step back. Also, like my coach, I think one thing that really stuck with me is also talking about like work-life balance and these things. And he said, you know what, it's not so much about like balancing your work and your private life. It's much more about balancing positive and negative energy. And there's an exercise I just recently did. It's kind of like just my return on energy matrix. And it's just a very simple two field matrix. And on the one side, you look what gives me energy and what drains energy, and on the other side you look what is critical and what's not critical, and then you just like fill out this matrix, and you like quickly see what are things that are critical and that give you energy, and what are things that are critical and don't give you energy or like drain energy. And what I then try to do is just like organize my life and my work more around these things that give me energy, and try to like do less of the things that drain energy, delegate them, or then just really like be disciplined about these things and not like really let them slip, because that is then also drains even more energy. If you could just like keep pushing a task ahead of you that you don't want to do, then it's even like more energy draining.
Yeah. I have to add to that, because I spoke on a TEDx stage about that a couple of years ago, so it'd be weird if I don't mention it. I do take a break. So like on Sunday, I have something I call the silent day. That's what I talked about, and it's a complete shutdown. So it's like literally everything off. And also I got the idea from a mentor of mine called the Genie Trip. So it's pretty much like a 2-week trip. Usually I book like a deal on like those websites, and then it's like an all-in experience. You go into the hotel, you put your phone and your computer in the safe, and then just read books.
Nice.
And so just for a week, I notice like your brain needs to shut down. It takes for me a week to get all the voices out in my head, to listen to myself and hear how my body's feeling. And then that's when I feel like, I can handle more. And then the next week, that's when you start dreaming again. I have a brain that dreams a lot, very kind of like, oh, this is a cool vision. How do you do that? And so that second week is very much about note taking and oh my God, we can do this differently. And obviously, because in that first week I was reading some books, new ideas pop up, like you mentioned when you read books as well.
Yeah.
So the Genie Trip has been a lifesaver, even if I'm not able to do the silent day. And lately I've read this book by David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. I don't know if you saw that book.
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
Really good. And I started endurance running. So I think I got, at one point on a Sunday, it was really stressful. And I ran like 7 to 8 hours. And I'm very slow, 35 kilometers or something like that. It was pretty much like from my place to the beach, which is like about 35 kilometers. And just like after that, you know, you hear your body.
That's yeah. I probably hear it already after like 10 kilometers. But
Yeah. Well, you know what happens is like your legs get stronger. So I bought this walking pad that goes under my desk. Especially during the pandemic, I wasn't like really doing anything. So I got that under my desk, and I noticed my legs started getting stronger, and I would walk like 5K a day while working. And I thought, oh, how nice would it be if I would actually start running? My legs would get even stronger, and I could just walk all day while working. And so I got a bit obsessed with it. And then, you know, at one point you start getting to 10K, and then I got to 15K one day while working, and I thought, holy moly, 15K, like I could do half a marathon, that's 21K. So I started signing up for these marathons. They give you medals, virtual marathons. And I think I finished at this point like 4 or 5. I started in March
Wow.
with the whole walking thing. And then at one point I was like, let's do this whole marathon thing. And so I decided to run to the beach, which was about 35K. And man, I got there, and then the next day I couldn't move. So yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So there's still hope for me.
Yeah, like I can recommend that book. It was very motivating. The reason why I wanted to do it is because I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I noticed that when that first 5K, the first 2K are really hard because I really hate it. So I'm like, I don't want to do this. Everything hurts. And then your legs get used to it. So suddenly you're like, okay, well, whatever, I'm just going to do it. And then the first 15 kilometers, you're like running, and it's tough, but it's like, okay, whatever. And then like pain starts coming, and then you start realizing, oh, I'm close to my wall. And then the wall hits, and then you're like, okay, well, this is tough, way tougher than business. And then after that, you kind of just think back, and your week just gets put into perspective. You have 7 hours to think. There's nothing else to do. You're just thinking. So you start thinking and realizing what you can do with your business. What else are you going to think? Well, what else am I going to think about, I guess? Start thinking about relationships, your health. I, funnily enough, didn't lose a lot of weight doing these type of things, but I started gaining a lot of clarity in my brain. So it's a very good kind of replacement for a silent day as well, I noticed, on days that I wanted to be active. But that's kind of what I do.
I think I definitely want to try the silent day. That sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, you can type in like my name and TEDx, and you'll see the speech pop
Maybe
up.
that's going to be my next obsession, silent days.
You know what? It's based on the silent day. A buddy of mine, also actually in Berlin, he did Vipassana, and my girlfriend a couple of years ago did Vipassana as well. So Vipassana is this meditation retreat. I don't remember how long it was. I think 10 days or something.
10 days, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like crazy. Just nothing. No sound. Once a day food. Like my personal nightmare, I'd say.
I think I was like, I want to do it one day because I think that's gonna push me out of my comfort zone like crazy.
Yeah. My girlfriend was struggling with a lot of these things, did the Vipassana legitimately, like she's been a completely different person since then, and really like inspiring. It's just people, I think it's like that stress thing, it just clicks, and just completely different person. But in a really good way, of course. But so I never had time, especially in the beginning of my business, to do Vipassana, like 10 days. And also it sounds hard. And so I wanted to do something like that. So I thought, okay, well, I can do 10 days, but I can force myself to do it one day. And this was like in the beginning when I was working 7 days a week. So I started doing one day, and I just pretty much, that friend, his name's Robert, he sent me the whole schedule of Vipassana, and I pretty much just kind of copy pasted it and changed it a little bit to fit my needs. And then I just kind of did a little Vipassana day, but people didn't know what Vipassana was, so I called it the silent day, so people understand you just are quiet and no technology. So yeah, even in the beginning of that, I think until like midday I don't even read. It's just I sit on the couch and like my body just shuts off, just fall asleep. It's really weird.
It sounds fascinating and like a nightmare at the same time to me.
Yeah, it's like that first 2 kilometers at running. It just, you hate it, and then suddenly your body's like, oh, we don't need to go like 100%. Boom, it drops to zero. You just fall asleep, and then at one point you start like getting bored. And I always knew that the moment I started feeling bored, which is like 2-3 hours in, that's when I'm like, oh, okay, I can like feel myself again. I can like, read a book, understand. I had the problem that I couldn't even read books. Like my brain was so hyper, so I couldn't even read books. I was like, oh, I'm bored. I can't like just. So the silent day recuperated my focus. So I really like that. But there was one more question that I wanted to ask, because at this point I'm talking too much. Blinkist at one point started growing quite well. I mean, you very well visualize these moments, but there are really cool things that are happening. I kind of checked out some things that you were posting about as well. And you had like Tim Cook visit the office. You've had collaborations with Seth Godin, my personal favorite because I love Formula One, like Nico Rosberg and stuff like that. When did that shift started happening to be able to get to that type of people? Because I mean, I know a lot. Actually, I know a couple of companies that, they have more than 100 employees, sometimes 1,000, and they can't get a Tim Cook to come to their office type of thing. So how do you start these collaborations with these people? How do you get their interest? How did you get on their radar? And how did that kind of start happening?
Yeah, maybe before I go to that question, I said it to the team last week, is that it's still for me very hard to believe that all these people want to work with us. Because in my mind, we're still this kind of like scrappy startup, and we are in many ways. And I also why is Nico Rosberg or like a Malcolm Gladwell, Seth Godin, why do these people want to work with us? Because they can work with anyone in the world. So I guess then the answer to the question is like really when it happened, I also don't really know. It was not this moment when everything was different. It was also, again, like everything, a process. And I think we knew very early on that we want to work with thought leaders and creators, and because we believe there's really cool content that we can create, and we have a platform that we can use to help them to get their ideas to more people. And I think you try, and the first time you try, it's like say, "Oh, thanks," in a very nice way, "Thank you, but right, I'm very busy. Let's talk again in a year." And as a company, you keep growing. As a product, you keep evolving. Your brand starts growing, and at some point, it just is the right time and the right moment. And then with Hascone, it was literally just an email saying, "Hey, how about doing something together?" And so right now it fits for me, so why not? So yeah, I think the answer to your question is really, it's just I think it's the outcome of a lot of work that we have done, being really focused on building a product and growing the brand, instead of trying to go after these people and convince them. I think in hindsight, it's just this is how it mostly happened. And Tim Cook was also a surprise for us. He chose to come to us. No, we didn't invite him. Of course, we would have invited him if we knew he was in Berlin. But it was just a week before. It's hey, someone is coming to visit you. Make sure you're in the office that day. And then Tim Cook showed up. So that was a pretty cool surprise.
Was it from the Berlin startup community, like the city government or something that arranged that, or how?
I think it was Apple arranging that. So I think what Tim Cook is doing, what I believe he's doing, is he's coming to Germany once a year, and every time he comes to Germany, he visits one company, one developer. And last year he came to our office.
Oh wow!
And that was really cool. And I think of course these are really cool moments, and I'm super proud having Tim Cook in the office was a great moment. And also, of course, I would lie if I said I wasn't proud about that and I didn't send this picture to my friends and family. And then I also think it's just it's so cool for the whole team, because that is just. That these people are interested in us is the result of all the work that everyone in the team put in and all the great work we have done. So it makes me proud twice. Makes me proud this person comes in, and makes me proud of the team we have.
I completely agree. So a big deal there was pretty much building the brand and a great product that pretty much lifts the brand as well.
And I think also like we are very authentic, and we are. I think we are like a brand that people connect to. People like our mission. We want to inspire people to keep learning. So that helps a lot because people connect to our vision and mission and say, to our mission and say, yeah, I get behind it. I want to be part of that. And then of course we offer them a platform that has 15, 16 million people on the other side that they can get their ideas to. So of course also that helps to have a certain reach because these people in the end, they have ideas and they want to get their their ideas across. And of course this helps as well if we can offer them something in return.
Right. We're actually starting to get close to wrapping up, but we have a segment on this show that we call the crash and burn segment. So these are about your failures, the biggest failures that you learned the most from. Are there any that pop up that you're like, yeah, I got one of the biggest learning lessons from that?
I think one of the failures was the one I talked earlier about, just kind of like product development one, just not really thinking from a customer perspective, but more from an idea perspective. But I think a second failure was I think we ran out of money twice at Blinkist, or nearly ran out of money, and it was always something that kind of like started slowly and then happened very suddenly. And I think we never really kind of like in the first place we didn't really manage our finances that well. We were like too optimistic. We still kept investing although we were running out of money. And I think twice we got pretty lucky that the team was supportive and they would kind of like they would give up the salaries for a while so that we could get through, and in the end we would find a way to like get some more money. I think it was like twice a big failure from my side as well, like not really managing the company properly and leading us into situations where we were not in control anymore, but we pretty much needed to get lucky in order to survive. And I think we always say that like we would never want to be in this situation again. So very tight eye, like always very close eye on the cash balance, and we would never put our control, or being a controller is so important for us these days. And it's we prioritize this above everything else. We never want to again be in a situation where we need to get lucky in order to survive.
So that's what you learned, pretty much being as close as possible to the cash and really control everything there.
So like it's just like being like I think kind of like finding the right balance between taking risk but also being a little bit more conservative on when it comes to the balance sheet. And it's really just driven by this experience of going in front of your team and saying, hey guys, we fucked up, we cannot pay your salaries anymore, and then then the team, but still really reacting really cool, saying, all right, like we're gonna get through this. And I think this made me so grateful that they supported us and stick with us. And but I still don't want to be in the situation again.
Yeah, of course not. That sounds like a value-based organization. Maybe another one that leads well into that, which is our impact story segment, obviously impact talks. What is something, I want to get this right, what is the project you worked on that had the biggest impact?
I guess it's Blinkist, because our impact is that we help millions of people all around the world to like fit learning into their life. We expose them to ideas that can change their life. We have all these cool stories from people that made a career shift and like got like a new job to like a stay-at-home mom with 4 kids that said, thanks to Blinkist, I got the confidence to start a business, and she's now an entrepreneur. And like really like what I love so much about Blinkist is that like knowledge empowers people. We just deliver the knowledge. But it empowers people, and it can have such a positive impact on people's lives. So that's also the thing that keeps me going, is this kind of really helping people to make more of their lives, or like to live better lives. So I do think Blinkist had a big impact. On a smaller scale, one story I like is that I ran this event series and podcast called State of Mind, where I also did very similar to this one here actually. So I interview people and like from all walks of life, big wave surfers, astronauts, chefs, entrepreneurs, and really try to understand how they think and act. And I've heard a few stories how really inspired people to start a new company, and one guy actually started a company trying to fight climate change after they listened to one of these talks. And I hope through this, then we're going to have a big impact on really solving climate change with this company that was inspired by one of the events I ran. So that's it's a small. But I think it's like also what drives me. I love sharing knowledge. I love sharing ideas, and I believe that if people have access to ideas and knowledge, they're going to do great things with that.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that we're working on currently is on education. I think a lot of the things that are happening in the world right now actually start from the children's perspective already. Like if people are properly educated, I've been blessed. I was born and raised in Belgium, and I learned a lot about history, math, everything. And I'm realizing when I go to maybe small cities in Germany even, or when I talk to people in the US, that their school system sometimes is not at all what I learned. And so I realized there's already a huge gap when you just go out of high school. So we're working on a project currently very similar to focused on education, making sure that we can transfer knowledge from like experts. And I think Impact Talks is partially also that transfer of knowledge that we always wanted to bring. A question that is super necessary considering who you are. What books are you reading? What books are impacting you the most? Maybe share a couple of books that you've read throughout your journey that impacted you the most.
So my passion for nonfiction books, it started with getting things done. I read this as a student, and until then, it never occurred to me that there is a way to organize yourself and to manage productivity. Until then, I thought just you put stuff on your paper and you forget about everything. So getting things done was really a game changer for me and my personal productivity. And got me pretty hooked on this business books and self-development books. So
what kind of tactics did it teach you?
The whole idea of collecting everything that's in your brain, write it down on a piece of paper, and then put it into a trusted system. It can be a to-do list, but something you trust. So David Allen says your brain is not a storage device, it's a thinking device. But if you try to remember everything and all the to-dos you have to do and everything you have to get done, then your brain cannot think. So just always do this brain dump, put everything on a piece of paper, and then go through the list. Is this something I want to do? Is it something I want to do later? And put it in the right place so that your brain has this peace of mind knowing that everything is dealt with at some point, and I can really focus on thinking. So that was, I think, for me the most important lesson from getting things done. So that was a book I loved, and I still go back to that book from time to time. Then another book that had a big impact, it's a little bit outdated these days, but I think still the idea of the lean startup was something that really resonated with us. Just this idea of find something that you can build, create a hypothesis, create something that you can test this hypothesis with, and then start learning. And I do think it's so important, not just in business, but in everything in life, just start an experiment, as you did. Start running to the beach, see how it feels. If you want to do more of that, cool, do more of it. If you hate it, stop doing it. So I try to do as many experiments as possible, not just in business but also in my life, and just see. And this is, I think, also why I love these rabbit holes, because these rabbit holes give me at some point I feel okay, I either like it more and want to go even deeper, or I stop going deep on that. So Lean Startup is definitely one of the books. I really love Creativity Inc.
Yeah, I read that one. That's the one that pretty much changed the whole structure of my business. And we won our first award within a couple of months after I read that book and restructured.
It's so cool, and I think full of lessons. Then Sapiens, I think is still the most influential book on me was Sapiens. Just this whole story of humanity and understanding. I like the key takeaways for me was first, we are living in a world we were not used to live in. Most of our existence, we lived in small tribes and just walking or going around, wandering around, and now we're living in these cities, in houses, which is not really true to our nature. But then also the second point of Sapiens, is that basically everything is a story. We as a society, we just believe in the few stories that we keep telling ourselves. And I think this also like it translates very well for business, because also business is just a story. The culture is a story we tell ourselves, and as long as we believe in a story, we can work together. So Sapiens was a book that was really inspiring for me. And then, just going back to the Warren Buffett one, I think he's such a fascinating character, and he's not just an investor. I think he's probably one of the most sophisticated thinkers about business. So Warren Buffett is just like a must read for everyone who's interested in either investing or in business, because he's so clear and he's so experienced and still a very interesting character. Probably not the guy I want to have beer with, but someone I definitely would listen to. So there's probably 5 books, and I could go on. I don't know how much time we have.
No worries. You can always send out a list and we can put it in the description. And obviously, you go to Blinkist and there'll be a ton of books as well. I'd kind of love to roll out the red carpet for you, let the people know what you have going on, what is happening, where they can find you, or anything that you want to share.
Yeah, the red carpet, thanks. That's I'm always very bad with these situations. I think what I definitely. So we just launched a new product at Blinkist. It's called Shortcasts. Actually, it distills the key insights from a podcast into a 15-minute version, and we do this directly with the creator. So we go to them, say, what are the favorite parts of your podcast? And then together we distill them into a 50-minute format. We have Nico Rosberg as part of our launch lineup. We have Malcolm Gladwell and many, many more. So that's something we have been working on for a while. And it's I love the format. The quality is amazing. And I love working with these creators and also find a way for them to monetize their podcast. So that's the first thing I would love to share. So if you listen to this or watch this, check it out on Blinkist, something we've been working on. And then the second one, I briefly talked about State of Mind before. That's the podcast I also co-produce and host. We're also launching a second season. I think by the time this goes out, the second season should be live. So look up State of Mind on any podcast app and you're going to find that. And then, of course, go back to Impact Talks to listen to everything you find here. That's the 2 things probably I would present.
Yeah, I checked out State of Mind as well. It's more of, like you said on the call before this, when we were talking, it's very much where you're trying to create an experience. So it's a really nice take on it. And so I can definitely recommend it. Any last thoughts you want to give to listeners? Obviously, we went through pretty much your entire life, mostly focusing on Blinkist, of course. But any last thoughts you want to give?
I think so. If I gave a recommendation, I would say listen to this, listen to a lot of all the other impact talks or a lot of interviews. Take this as inspiration, but find your own way. I do think too often we try to be like someone else, or we think we have to be like someone else, and I think life is too short to copy someone else. Find your own way. Get as much input as you want, and it's really cool to get exposed to many ideas and ways of life. But in the end, find your own way. Find something that works for you, and always be true to yourself when it comes to that. And not tell yourself the story you have to be that way just because it seems to be the cool thing to do, or someone else tells you to do that.
Yeah, I love it, and I think it's a great way to close. Thank you so much for coming on, and hope to see you on the next one as well.
Yeah, see you in Rotterdam.
If you like this episode, you can check out our most recent one here. And if you haven't already, make sure you click here to subscribe and see the next one. But if you're interested in more tips and tricks, then make sure to join our Facebook group where you can find thousands of like-minded people and you get direct access and support